and today I'm telling you about thinking about the experiences in question and being able to find a way of communicating them thoroughly and effectively to other people. And I'm probably going to do this really badly, but I'm going to try my best. Firstly, I think that the person who is exploring all of this weird stuff has to keep check on their inner dialogue. And your inner dialogue is all the stuff that's going on inside you, which is telling you what's real. And it's all the things which is telling you what seems to be real, and it's all based upon, with the average individual, emotional reactions to things which have happened, or hopes and aspirations and dreams and fears and worries and all the other kind of like complicated inner dialogue which makes the human being what the human being is, with all of its positives and negatives and benefits and good aspects and good attributes, and of course negatives as well. All of these things take you up to where you are in here and now, and then this becomes the nature of the truth and reality which you express. Alright, this is true for all of us, and especially it's true for myself, because I've had all kinds of weird and wonderful things from various different forces acting upon me, and I've been in various different cultural groups and different spiritual groups and the lack thereof. And also I've kind of, I've had to find out about what this whole life thing is about from my own unique point of view because of my personal history. And that's what's helped to create what I am. Therefore, what I'm projecting to you today is, to a certain extent, the product of all of my experiences, all of my thinking, and everything leading up to where I am now. And that's the same for you as well. I suppose, fortunately and beneficially for yourself, I've made lots of mistakes on the way, and through having made all those mistakes and having to find ways of correcting them or correcting things wrong inside myself, I've been able to think about these things probably in a different way than yourself. Let's put that out there, because I'm going to be a different individual than you. You have a right to agree with me or disagree with me, or look at what I say and think it's giving me an opportunity to think more creatively about the subjects at hand. Whatever. But I'm telling you what I think is a good, right, and sane, intelligent way of looking at this stuff. I mean, when you were in like middle school science, you had your structure of your experiment. Well, let's think about that kind of, as a means of trying to work out what may have happened on a particular day when something weird seemed to occur. It's not a perfect structure because it's not taking everything into account. And so we can't communicate just from that kind of like middle school science structure to everyone else, but we can at least try and think it through. Alright, normally you'd have like your apparatus section, and you write down your apparatus there, and all the test tubes you got, and all the little pieces of equipment and the chemicals, and that's the apparatus. Then it's the method, what you actually did to try and create the result or put something to the test or to investigate something. So you put your tripod here and your beaker there and your Bunsen burner there, and you explain every single step bit by bit, Then there'll be a results section, and then there'll be a conclusion section, wouldn't there? Now, we're not talking about something which is made up of easily observable physical components, and you can be in a state of mind of watching those physical components doing things all the time. So yes, we have to take a different attitude, but can we actually think about that particular structure and trying to apply that particular structure to something strange that happened, Let's say I was to try and apply it to an experience, Because when you're talking about trying to deliberately create something or trying to deliberately make something happen, it's much more complicated than just a middle school science experiment. Think about it. I mean, I could just say like, alright, my apparatus was, I don't know, a shamanic drum and a candle and a dark mirror. Alright, then my method was to firstly go into meditation for about 10 minutes, just to calm the mind. Then I did a lesser rite of pentagram to try and make myself feel safe, knowing of course that the lesser rite of pentagram was just a form of moving prayer, and it appears to have some form of means of shifting the invisible energy, but on the other hand, we still have questions about it, but the ritual was done anyway. Then after that, I chose to create a particular chant which contained the information in the words which was somehow connected to the particular result I was trying to achieve. whilst doing so in candlelight, because that would help me to enter into a more relaxed state of mind. I could then state that I attempted to raise energy through chanting and drumming for a period of about 10 minutes, in which I attempted to enter into a relaxed and meditative state of mind, focusing in on that one particular concept for the purposes of bringing myself into trance with it, and to try and make that concept bigger in my mind during the experience. Then after that, I sat down in peace and tranquility and continued to chant while staring into the black mirror in accordance with the particular tradition which I have explained earlier on, in which I was in a darkened room with one candle either side of the dark mirror, and I was staring at the reflection of the dark mirror with the light of the candles hitting my face. Then, during the experience, the natural progression occurred, and the persistence of vision blob, where my facial reflection appeared to be occurred, and then with the passage of time, it seemed to morph into a different shape. The shape is the shape which I'm going to describe here, and it appeared to be a reptilian creature with scaly skin and glowing red eyes and sharp teeth. The image then faded dramatically when my emotional state changed to a state of fear, and I then blew out the candles and ended the experience. Okay, that's like the method and what appeared to be the results. The results appeared to be the seeing of something brought about by persistence of hallucination, persistence of vision hallucination in the dark mirror. Then we have to stop. Then what would your conclusion section kind of like be like? Think about it. What would the conclusion be like? What could the conclusion be like? If you're someone who's got like all of your ideas and thoughts and feelings and moods and theologies and the rest of it brought you up to where you are in the here and now, you're going to perceive what you saw from a particular point of view. Oh, it was a demon, it was an angel, it was a ghost, it was my guardian angel, it was a this, that, and the other, it was a that, the other, and this. Now, stop. What conclusion can we genuinely draw? If there is a number of different possibilities as to why that particular experience occurred, then we have a number of different reasons to think that there could be a wide variety of different conclusions which could be drawn from it. Number one, standard hypnosis. All right, standard meditation. You put yourself into a state of being. You use certain particular concepts during your auto-hypnosis, being the drumming and the chanting, and then hey presto, that thing which you had conjured up in your mind, you then saw, because you've basically tricked yourself into seeing the thing. You've tricked yourself into seeing the thing, you've tricked yourself into seeing the thing, and hey presto, you see the thing. I mean, my point here is that our conclusions could be many and varied, taking into account what it is we've experienced up to this date, and it has made us what we are. The various stories we've read, the various ways in which we understand the world. I mean, if we were an individual who believed exclusively in the holographic consciousness point of view, then we probably believe that our consciousness is somehow connected to something which was being shown to us from maybe a long way away, and we were connecting to it. It could be a wide variety of different things. If we were someone who was terrified of angels and demons and spirits, then that's the interpretation that we would have. It would be that variety of animism. Or we don't have any real hard and fast knowledge about this. Some of these things can be put to the test. There are times when we are doing these things and it seems like we can change our focus of attention in different directions, specifically as a result of intention, to try and hopefully perceive in, let's say, a dark mirror experience, something which is, happening elsewhere and the rest of that, but it's not something to be 100% relied upon, because we can't get reliably into these states of mind whereby this, that, and the other weird thing can happen. So it's more like trying to apply that, middle school science mentality, or above and beyond middle school science mentality, to something which is even more difficult to try and define in any form of clear-minded scientific terms. We're down to defining the characteristics of the experience and trying to work out what else could be happening. I mean, when I've had an experience and it was weird and it was strange and it was peculiar and the rest of it, and I may have developed some variety of beliefs as a result of it. I still have to have a bit of a skeptical clear-mindedness about it, because I can't just tie myself up in knots intellectually and emotionally all the time, worrying about things which might not necessarily be of a serious impact on me. I'm not going to worry about the impact of, I don't know, demons or negative energies upon me, because that just doesn't help me as a person. And it doesn't help me as a person stay sane and stay well-adjusted and stay as a contributing member of human society. It just would not be beneficial for me to be like that. And there's a possibility that, I could be moving in a more delusional direction if I carry on going down the route of confirmation bias, of thinking like, I'm trying to prove to myself that I'm right. No, you're not trying to prove to yourself that you're right. You're trying to experiment with nature. A real scientist, when they've done experiments, they've had an experience which might possibly teach them something, teaches that as an opportunity to learn, and tries to see it from a wide variety of different points of view to see which one could possibly be an indicator of the nature of truth and reality in the here and now, in the real, natural world. And that's the same attitude which you've got to take to your experiences, because none of them are going to give you clear-minded total truth. When you're practicing to try and improve your divination, you're going to start to get much more intuitive understanding and feelings. But a lot of these things will still have to be put to the test against reality and nature. You cannot jump to a conclusion based upon your dowsing or your divinations all the time. They are there to inspire your thinking in different directions and give you different possible ways of looking at the same thing. It's not a question of hard and fast, clear-cut truth. It's not cast in stone. Okay, you still have some choice, and even if we were in a completely deterministic universe, it doesn't help you as an individual to think that you don't have the power of choice. And I think you also need to deploy a certain level of power of choice when it comes to what opinions you develop and you bring about your beliefs when playing with all of this stuff. All of the things that you think to the here and now, today, this very minute, from this very minute forward, you don't have too much of a choice as to what's made you the way you are. You don't have too much of a choice about what made your opinions about the way the reality is, because it's all been sculpted by so much on the way. And no matter what it is you think about what's true and what's real, it's only going to be a teeny drop in the ocean by comparison with what is true and what's real. So therefore, all of us human beings have to be looking at life as if through a glass darkly, because none of us actually understand what we're talking about. And the more experiences that you have, the more you build up a certain level of hypotheses as to how these things could occur, and what's really going on here, and about things like the universal energy field and whether it operates holographically or plasmically or what. I suppose if I was to be honest with you, there are some particular theologies which I've developed as a result of all this stuff. And that's that consciousness appears to be a phenomena inside us which is kind of like allowed to occur because of the shapes of our bodies and our brains. And there's a much more greater consciousness of which we're all somehow a part of. And each and every single human individual is divinely connected somehow, and therefore the sufferings of the homeless beggars on the streets is my suffering as well, simultaneously as all the stuff which I'm going through in my own physical life, and all the people who are dying in Africa from, famine and war. They are part of my experience too, and therefore it's important for me to have compassion to people who are doing much worse than me somehow. That my consciousness is somehow connected to all of the blades of grass in the fields and all of the trees and all of the animals, and there's also different levels of finer reality of which I'm somehow a part of as well. And I don't know why the universe would be this way. I have no idea. I have no idea why human life would be this way. I have no idea why human consciousness would be this way. It's just that there appears to be, you as an individual don't appear to be just bound in time and space to the here and now. You exist simultaneously in the here and now, and also in the future, and also in the past. The human being is different than just the physical organism. The human being is more than that. The thing which makes us human is somehow both part of the physical as well as separate from it. and for some reason, we have to be individual blobs of consciousness going through the experience of all of the strange things that we have to in material life. And it's somehow part of the learning of the whole universe and the consciousness of the whole universe, and that's the way in which it seems to be. But me having said that, of course I could easily be wrong. I could, so can you, so can everyone, so can the guy at the end of the street, so can the guy who's talking really, really loudly and aggressively about spiritual things, and so can the guy who's being really, really quiet about spiritual things. We can all be wrong. So instead of thinking which one is true, instead we just carry on growing and hoping for the best, because that's all we can do. Okay? That's the way in which I see it. But that's, again, that doesn't matter. That's just a theology which I've developed as a result of playing with all of this stuff and working out that each and every single spirituality in the whole world is just another denomination of the same singular universal divine truth that human consciousness is immortal. We are all part of a sea of consciousness, and we're all growing together, and that's pretty much all there is to it. I don't need to do the stuff to justify any particular point of view or to prove a particular religious argument, because it's not important. What you believe religiously does not have any real importance to me. What you think intellectually about these things has importance to me, because what we're talking about when we're talking about spiritual experiences, we're talking about a phenomena which is somehow part of life, somehow part of well-being, somehow part of existence and survival. And if these experiences demonstrate there's a force there, why aren't human beings using it for human betterment? Okay, why aren't human beings using this specifically for human betterment and to try and advance the understanding of it? I mean, if you're looking at an experience that you've had and you're trying to work out what it actually meant, okay, think about it more like a scientist would. Think about what you could possibly learn from it. Think about the defining characteristics of what happened in the experience. Do not be in a rush to try and understand everything, and certainly do not blow up your ego to the point of thinking you have some kind of divine power when that particular experience only happened at that one particular moment because of the specific rearrangements of the situation, the circumstances of your body and your mind, and everything else which led you up to that one particular point. And reproducing that 100% accurately and reliably and gaining the same particular results again and again and again is probably not what you're going to be able to do, because circumstances change, the situation changes, the natural world around you changes, and human skill is variable. So how can you say that your ritual worked? How can you say that your little experience which you created worked? Taking into account the complexities of the human mind and the complexities of the human body and the complexities of all of the forces which made you who you are and what you are to that one particular point in time, and on that one particular day, and also taking into account that even identical twins don't develop in the same way, even if they've had the same life experiences on the way. Alright, in what way could you codify each and every single thing which made you able to achieve that one particular experience? Alright, each and every single factor, no. A handful of them which seem to be relevant, yes. Alright, such as the meditation, the drumming, the opening of the chakras, the meditation, the specifics of the chanting, these things you could talk about. But going into greater detail about all the various things that could be making the experience happen, no, we cannot. You don't have enough information, nor do I, nor does anybody out there. So that's why we have to stop trying to think about saying it works when we don't have enough information as to what particular parts of natural forces are taking effect which help to create a particular experience. Okay, we can't do that. What we can do is we can say that for some reason the circumstances was right at that time for me to seem to have that one particular experience. Alright. The factors which I deliberately attempted to manipulate in order to have this particular experience was this. The meditation, the chanting, the altered states of consciousness practice, the prayerful states, describing in detail how your sense of perception you deliberately shifted and how the experience and the theatrics of the experience also seemed to shift your sense of perception. Describe in detail the various feelings that you had through whichever language is sufficiently appropriate for you to do so at that time. Taking notes that you're using the language that you're using at that time, because that's the way in which you seem to understand it at the moment, and that the things that you're describing, such as chakras and energies, still might not exist and could still be an aberration of your brain. Alright? But go into it, explore it, experiment with it, write it down if you can. Get onto YouTube, do an entire series of video blogs about it. But doing it with the right way and with the right spirit, so we're not deluding people and promising miracles and promising that all their problems will be gone and their lovers will come back and money will come into their bank account, their health problems will suddenly miraculously disappear, and all this, that and the other, because it's wrong to. It is objectively wrong to promise that. We have to at least attempt to bring some scientific thinking into this. We have to at least attempt to work out what's right and what's wrong. We've got to attempt to apply critical thinking to something which would not normally have critical thinking applied to it, because it's based much more upon feelings and emotions and states of being and a sense of energy flowing and all that kind of stuff. You know, we need to have this thing in place so that we're better off with our inner dialogue about this stuff. We can think things through better about this stuff, and we don't go down some variety of loony track of thought. You know, there's plenty of people who've never done drink and never done drugs, who just because of the things that they're taught to think from a wide variety of points of view, political, but also magical and religious and spiritual, they can literally go crazy. There's an aberration of thought. There's actually a form of psychosis which can be initiated purely through bad thinking. It's called cognitive psychosis, I think, something along those lines. So, you know, even if you're, you know, perfectly clean living, healthy living, and all the rest of that, you can develop some strange ideas and go a bit crazy as a result of thinking too much about these things, as well as jumping to too many conclusions, right? Please don't jump to too many conclusions. Do not confuse skill with luck and luck with skill. And don't go around saying it works because you're not advancing your knowledge, you're not advancing somebody else's knowledge. Try at least and apply some reasoning ability to this. Try and describe and define things as well as you can, and define your terms. Right? If you want to turn around to someone and say, it works, you have to think closely about what it actually is. The it in this particular case is your arrangement of sense of perception. It's the environment that you created so that you could try and create that change of sense of perception, and it's the techniques that you use to create the altered states of consciousness by which you could then try and make this change of sense of perception and energy flowing or whatever it is happen, and then to decode and then to codify which particular types of states of mind and sense of perception appeared to create the particular results. Alright? It is the promise that results are reliable through stupid phrases like "it works" that leads people down the wrong path all the time, and I really think that we should all stop it forever, 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 and forever. We have to have some very real, proper science in terms of all of our thinking if there is to be any form of progress. And when we are describing the use of, I don't know, various forms of ritual tools and accessories associated with various different faith groups, explain it properly. Explain why you chose that particular symbol, explain why it was actually there. Point out the fact that you know full well that it is just a symbol and therefore just a form of sensory stimulation to help you to achieve a particular state of mind. And the fact that it isn't important to have, and the fact it doesn't have any power of its own right, it's just something to help to create that state of mind. Using much more of a parapsychological explanation as opposed to a magical, religious, and occult explanation will help society and will help people. But using the attitude of "it works" or "you have to follow the traditions" and all of this cult rubbish will not help anybody. But guys and girls, right, what we're doing when we're playing with this kind of things is we're exploring the wilderness. Okay, we're exploring nature. We're trying to experiment or experience to try and find out something, or just to experience something to the most part, okay? It's like a whopping great woodland, and you've only got a handful of guidebooks, and all of them have like untruths in them. Alright? All of them have falsehoods, or all of them are only approaching you from the point of view of going down one particular route through the forest, not necessarily the objective truth of what is going on, or the objective truth of the fact there is an actual forest there. You know, we're just like going straight into it. Every single book or theology or approach that we've, come across, there will be some truth there, but there will also be a heck of a lot of exaggerations. And a lot of these people are trying to communicate through a particular language that they think is right at the time to explain to people for their own purposes, often not for your purposes and not for the purposes of the rest of society. Therefore, the language that they're using is going to be difficult at best, and often will misguide you. And some of it was written at a time in the author's life when they saw life in a particular way, and they saw things in a particular way, and if you were to ask them again, like 5 or 10 years later, once the book had been published, whether they still thought that way, they'll probably turn around to you and say, probably not. Alright, so and that goes for the great masters of any form of discipline associated with this stuff. And for all people, because we're all trying to grow and change in our developments and our understanding, and try to help people help ourselves to move forward with our growth. And we don't know what we'll be thinking about life in another 5 years' time. And you don't know what you'll be thinking about life in 5 years' time. So we just have to gather the experiences together and see whether there's a similarity. There does seem to be ways in which we can use consciousness to have a particular impact, shall we say. We'll call it an impact, we'll call it an effect. An impact. But even like the greatest of the greatest and the best of the best, they're still asking questions. They don't have the answers. It's the ones who say they've got the answers, those are the ones you've got to be more careful of, because they don't. Also, when we're thinking about what conclusions we can draw from our experiences, I mean, I could spend possibly 7 years, 10 years or whatever in a university library going through thousands and thousands of books and studies and reports, and I could then be cross-referencing that with the writings of all the spiritual healers and all of the occultists and all the rest of that. And I still would not be in a position to fully understand what actually happened with just one of my weird experiences, because there's too much out there, there's too much information there, there's too many different points of view out there, and there's too many different reasons for one to have at different times in your development, in your life, in your growth, really strong opinions about one form of answer or solution or another one. There will always be more and more questions. I mean, I had my weird experiences, and that convinced me that magic is real, therefore I need to understand this so I can use it for my health. I tried to find the people which could help me, and I just didn't really find people who knew anything. And when we're talking about a clear-cut result that you need, like a cure for your disease, it's not there. And it's not there because essentially they lie to you. Alright, they lie to you to suggest that this, that, and the other works. They lie to you to say, everything's down to this, that, and the other. They don't know what they're talking about. Alright, the more people who are out there who say, it works, or, I have the great power, or something like that, it just does more harm to society. It just stops things from working out well. It affects people's lives badly. It's not a good explanation. And on top of that, you suspect that there's a desire to deceive. There's an actual intention on part of some of these people to just deceive you as to what is capable, what you're capable of, or what you can achieve, or what can be achieved if you do this, that, and the other. And you've got to work out why they're doing it. Okay? They're not telling you the truth. They're telling you something, but it just seems to me like it is a sound that people make. It just seems like a glib thing that comes out of people's mouth. And those who express it with greatest intensity are the ones you need to be most worried about, because they're sick in the head. Okay, they're just sick people. I had a client once on a psychic line, and he was a Buddhist guy. Very, very nice, but he couldn't quite understand that there are in fact people in the world who are sick, that there are people in the world who say things which aren't true, and people in the world who exaggerate for their own personal benefits and all that kind of stuff. And he was kind of like at a wit's end with it, and because of the negative effects of these negative people upon him, he was even thinking of just ending his life. But I had to point out, no, you're just a nice guy who's skilled and compassionate. You're just a bit naive, and unfortunately, you've come across some terrible people, and there are such things as terrible people. Why would they be like that? Because they are. Okay, some people, they're either brought into a way of thinking that's bad for them, or they develop a way of thinking that's bad for them, or they're born with a way of thinking that's bad for them. And sometimes you can get someone who's a zealot who comes up to you because they were like what I was like when I was in my young days, a complete zealot for magic, wanting to try and get everyone to do it because then it would do what I thought it would do for people, which isn't what it did for a lot of people. And that was a problem. And on a lot of the assessments which I made when I was young, and just trusting people who said it works was just like plain wrong, because I had accepted their truth. And the truth is not as clear-cut as that. We can't use the phrase "it works." We have to say that there's something which happens under anomalous circumstances which we can attempt to bring about. We don't know what it means. How many different scientific studies are there out there about just like normal mundane things like diet and nutrition, for crying out loud sake? There's like a whole load. And there's even like different opinions as to what particular diet is right under what particular conditions, and that's just food, right? That's just food. What about like potential psychic and spiritual and divine energy? Surely that's even more weird and wonderful and complicated than having your Brussels sprouts. Surely it is. Come on, think it through. Just try and deploy some thought and reasoning when you're dealing with this stuff. Help your friends and your family and your colleagues who've got these ideas to recognize that they can't sign a check that they cannot cash. Alright? The magical community needs to accept the fact that there are some things which they cannot do, and they should not go around promising. And they should change their attitude and change their use of language specifically to avoid difficulties and problems. And if they don't, then they will be looked at terribly by the rest of the world, including the scientists and the doctors and everybody else, because they'll deserve it. That's the sick thing here. That's the sad thing here. The culture of selfishness that people are getting themselves into are just trying to make other people think and believe the way that they want to because it makes them feel good about themselves. It's got to stop. Just stop. The sadism that goes into the whole occult, pagan and magical world, the cultism that goes into it, the harmful attitudes that goes into it. These are things you're supposed to be growing through, but not through harming other people. And growing through them requires that you're, harsh on yourself. And that's difficult for a lot of people.